Welcome to part 2 of section 5.4 in Math for Technology. The picture that you have in front of you is called the bow tie picture, and they call it that because you have these triangles in the center that kind of look like a bow tie. And the idea here is that those triangles that are created, those are your reference angles. That's to remind you to always come to the x-axis when you're making your reference angles. The other thing that this picture helps us with is to know when trig functions are positive. If they're not positive, then they're negative. So I only have to think about these certain ones. Everything else is going to be negative. And then we're going to use that information to help us find actual angle measurements. In quadrant 1, because x-axis is positive and the y-axis is positive, all 6 of our trig functions are positive. In quadrant 2, we have a negative x and a positive y because we have one of each. Sine and cosecant will be positive, but everybody else who uses the x will be negative. In quadrant 3, we have a negative x and a negative y. So the only positive ones are tangent and cotangent because they both use the double negative. Everybody else will be negative. In quadrant 4, we have a positive x and a negative y. So the only positives are cosecant and secant because they don't use the negative y. So we're going to go back and forth and we're going to use that picture when these problems. First, example 2 says find all angles theta in the interval 0 to 360 where tangent of theta is negative. So in every 360 degrees there are actually 2 angles that will fit the criteria that they're given. The calculator will give you one, and you have to figure out the other one. In this case, they're discussing that tangent of theta is negative. So we have to ask ourselves, when is tangent negative? So let's go up here. Well, it says tangent is positive in quadrant 3, and they're all positive in quadrant 1, which means tangent must be negative in quadrant 2 and 4. So the angle that would create this to be negative must be in quadrant 2 and 4. So I'm going to go ahead and just draw an x and a y, and I just said it has to be in quadrant 2 and in quadrant 4. So those are the 2 angles I'm looking for. Now, first one the calculator will give me. So I'm going to grab my calculator and I'm going to do the inverse because I'm looking for the angle. And I want to do it in degrees because it says between 0 and 360. So inverse tangent of negative 0.53 is negative 27.9. So my calculator gives me negative 27.9. Now that is an angle, but it actually is not fitting my criteria. My criteria says it has to be bigger than 0, but less than 360, and that is not true. So let's do a coterminal angle to get from a negative 27.9, which is actually this angle right here, and I want to go coterminal, so I'm going to go all the way around. So we're going to think back to the fact that coterminal angles differ by 360. So I'm going to add 360 degrees. And I'm going to get an angle of 332.1 degrees. So that is one of the angles that if I plugged in tangent of that, I would get approximately negative 0.53. Now it won't be exact because I have rounded this answer. So I've got one of my 2 answers. That's this one. So now I want to come over here and find this other one. Over here in the second quadrant. I found the first quadrant one. So let's think about how far they differ. From this terminal side to this terminal side, you have to think how much apart is that? Well, that is actually a half of a circle or 180 degrees. So I have to back up 180 degrees. So I'm going to take 332.1 and I'm going to subtract 180, and that'll give me the second angle that would give me negative 0.53. So that is approximately 152.1 degrees. Now if you want to check these, do tangent of this and see if you're close to negative 0.53. Do tangent of 152.1 and see if you're close to negative 0.53. You should have two answers for these types of problems. If we look at example 3, it asks us for things in radians, so we definitely want to be able to do that. Either put your, well, easiest thing would be to put your calculator in radians. And they're asking us to do cosecant with negative 2.84. So if you have a calculator that has cosecant, you can just plug it in. But before I do that, let's go figure out where is cosecant negative. All of them are positive in quadrant 1. Cosecant is positive in quadrant 2. So it's negative in quadrants 3 and 4. So I'm looking for 3 and 4. Those will be the two angles that I need. So I'm at the bottom of my bow tie. So to find the first one, I'm going to do the inverse cosine of negative 2.84. If you can't do inverse cosine because your calculator, or sorry, cosecant, if your calculator doesn't have that, then cosecant is the reciprocal of sine. So if you're doing that, then do 1 over negative 2.84. So in radians, I get an angle of approximately negative 0.36. So again, that's a negative angle, and my criteria says it wants it to be bigger than 0 and less than 2 pi. So it's actually having me come down into this quadrant, but I need its coterminal angle. Remember, a full circle is 2 pi, so I'm going to add 2 pi to that, and that'll get me to the positive coterminal angle. So this angle right here is 5.92. So I have one of my answers. Now I need to find the one in quadrant 3. Well, no longer are they 180 degrees apart. They're actually closer than that. So what I'm actually going to think about is, we saw this original amount was given to us right here. It was given to us as negative 0.36, so it came down 0.36. Well, that means that this right here is also negative 0.36, or I'm sorry, I should say is 0.36. So this little piece right here is 0.36. If I want to know what that angle is, starting at the initial side, I would travel to here, and back to here. So I want to know what that is added up. Well, we know that that's half a pi, that's a pi, so it's a pi plus the 0.36. So the second angle I'm looking for is going to be pi plus 0.36. So the second angle that I'm getting, this one on the third quadrant, is approximately 3.50. So there are my two angles. So it's going to be kind of like a little bit of a puzzle. You're going to have to figure out if I'm going to add 180, subtract 180, add an increment to pi or a half a pi. And if you have any troubles with that, just get a hold of me and I'll see what I can do to help and give you some more options. Thank you and have a good day.